Hi everyone, welcome back to another fun-filled lesson of Tenify Actual Speaking. For Clyde. Time for lesson 51, and today we'll be talking about our fears. So what do you fear and how do you overcome them? My biggest fear, or fears, would have to be ghosts and bugs, insects, little creatures that have many, many legs. So I really detest insects and bugs, and I really am afraid of ghosts because I believe they do exist. Anyhow, researchers at the University of California in Los Angeles, they found that people, they better overcome their fears by labeling them and by talking about them rather than ignoring them. So just because you try to ignore your fears doesn't mean that it will help overcome your fears. Of course, each and every day in life, we experience new things, and we have good experiences and bad experiences. And sometimes those bad experiences can leave you with fears of certain things. Anyhow, whether you fear animals such as dogs, cats, insects, anything such as ghosts like me, let's talk about our fears today. Are you ready? Let's begin. As always, let's begin with our warm-up segment, which has to do with, of course, the 5 W's and how questions. So today we are going to learn all about talking about our fears. But before we begin, there are, of course, many different ways of talking about our fears. You can say, I am afraid of something, I am scared of something, I have a fear of something, or you can also use the word dread. So I guess there are different levels of extremity. So scared of, afraid of is perhaps, I guess, a gentle way of saying that you're scared of something. A stronger way is perhaps to have fear. And when you want to talk about something you intensely, extremely are afraid of, you can use the word dread. So let's take a look by brainstorming first of all with these cues. The first W category we have for you is WHO, our who question. So who do you fear or dread? We not only fear things, we can dread or fear people, right? So is there a person that you are afraid of, that you fear being with perhaps? So think about that as well. Now moving on to our what category, what happened and why are you afraid of him or her? So focus first of all on what happened and then ask yourself why, okay? So why are you afraid of him or her, of course? So you can talk about the person that you fear or are afraid of. Let's move on to our next what question. Now moving on to things, okay? What are the things you fear or dread the most? So the key here is the most. What do you fear the most? What do you dread the most? As I explained to you, fear or dread, they mean the same thing, but which one is stronger? That's right. This is stronger, okay? So this is strong fear of something, an intense fear of something. Now, what activities do you try to avoid because of your fear? Let's say, for example, thinking about activities, okay? What I can tell you about the activities that I try to avoid are things like going to the mountains, like hiking, because, as I told you, I am afraid of bugs and insects, the little many-legged creatures. So I avoid certain activities such as hiking, okay? So think about the activities you try not to do. You try to avoid because of your fear. Now, what was your immediate reaction to the incident? Now, was there a happening? Was there an event or an incident, okay, that made you fear something? And what happened? Okay, so what was your immediate reaction? Immediate means right then and there, okay? So what was your number one reaction, of course, when this happened, okay? Moving on, what have you tried to overcome your fears? So think about the things you have tried to get over your fears. Remember I said, do not try to ignore your fears, face your fears, okay? Moving on, what are some things people generally have a fear of, okay? So you can say, I have a fear of something, I am afraid of something. In this case, what are some things people generally are afraid of? Now let's move on to when. When did you begin to fear those things? When was it that you started to fear these things? When was the most terrifying moment, okay, in your life? Think about a certain moment in life that you were really terrified and horrified. So when was it? Also, where were you when that horrible incident occurred? Think about location. What was it? And then where were you and when was it? Moving on to why. Why don't you have any fears? I have plenty of friends that are not afraid of anything. Of course, many of my male friends are not afraid of ghosts like me because they do not believe in ghosts. So if you don't have any special fears, you can say, well, I don't have any fears because so forth. So talk about why you don't have any fears, or why are you so afraid of or so afraid to do something. So in this case, you would talk about why you are so afraid of something or someone. And in this case, you would talk about why you are so afraid to do something. Okay, got it? We'll go over these patterns later on, so yeah, hang in there. Also, finally on to our how category. How do you feel? Or how do you react towards the things you fear? For example, I'll give you an example. If I were to answer this question, let's say, for example, bugs, cockroaches, for example, I would say, well, I jump up and down when I see a cockroach. I scream when I see a cockroach. I run out of the room when I see a cockroach. I cry when I see a cockroach. So talk about those reactions, how you react or how you feel towards the things you really fear in life. And finally, on to our last how question. How did you or how do you overcome your fears? I told you a bit about the researchers at a university in Los Angeles, and what did they say? They said people in general, it's easier for them to overcome their fears if they face them and not ignore them. So you can perhaps talk about how you overcome your fears or how you overcame your fears in the past. Okay, we're done brainstorming with our 5 W and H questions, our brainstorming cues. Now it's time for us to move on and listen to a conversation. Let's take you to actual talk. The other day, I was flipping through the channels and I came across a really scary movie, The Exorcist.
That one is scary.
So I had to change that channel as fast as I could because I detest scary movies.
Yeah, I don't really like scary movies much myself.
Yeah.
Why do people want to be scared?
Some people like it, but for me, they give me nightmares after I watch it. So I stay away. I avoid horror movies as much as I can.
I see.
I am really terrified of scary movies.
Well, I believe in suspended disbelief. So when I watch a movie, I put myself in that situation, and that really bothers me.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
When I was a kid, my parents took us to a triple feature at the drive-in.
Okay.
And they thought we'd fall asleep by the third movie.
Oh no.
And the third movie was Jaws.
Oh.
So I have this horrible fear of sharks,
Oh.
even though there's very little chance of being bitten by a shark.
Attacked by a shark.
But when I'm out in the ocean swimming, doing a long swim,
The thought crosses your mind.
Oh, it is a constant in my mind. You can't get rid of it.
Yeah. Another thing that really scares me is the dark. I am afraid of the dark, and I think one of the reasons is because I'm not in control. I feel like I'm not in control. And
so it's more of the fear of the unknown?
Exactly. Fear of the unknown. So sometimes I have to put the light on before I fall asleep because I'm scared of the dark. I don't know what's going to happen. I do. I'm not afraid to admit it, but it's just one of the ways I overcome my fear.
Okay. Well, I think Winston Churchill? No, maybe Roosevelt said, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And that really applies.
Yeah, that's very profound.
Because I mean, other than sharks, which is kind of an unreal fear, I don't have any big fears. The idea is I think we have to try to overcome our fears.
Sounds good. That was an interesting conversation between the two. It's fun. I think Rachel and I have, something in common. We are afraid of ghosts, but I really do enjoy watching horror movies. But I do have a difficult time going to sleep at night. I sometimes do have nightmares as well. Now, Peter said that he is afraid of sharks because of a certain incident. Yes, something that happened a long, long time ago. Anyhow, let's check out what they said line by line. First of all, Rachel began by saying, the other day, I was flipping through the channels and I came across a really scary movie. First of all, let's break the sentence into half. Okay, in half. In the beginning, it says, the other day, I was flipping through the channels. You may know what this means, but what does it mean? I'll show you. Imagine this is a remote control. You're watching television, and you're doing this. You're flipping through the channels. So what's on channel 21? What's on channel 42? So you're flipping channels, switching channels, changing from one channel to another, okay? You can simply say flip through the channels. You're changing channels to see what is playing on television. So she was flipping through the channels, and she says, I came across. To come across something or someone means to encounter that, well, unexpectedly. You don't plan it, but you just happen to bump into it or happen to see it or hear it, okay? So I came across a really scary movie. He says, which one? And she says, The Exorcist. That's a really, really scary movie. So she says, so I had to change the channel as fast as I could, okay? As fast as I could, because I detest scary movies. Now, detest is quite a strong word, okay? Basically means to hate, dislike. Now, dislike is not a strong word, but detest is a very strong word. If you really hate something strongly, you can say, I detest something. I detest something. She detests scary movies, in other words, horror movies. Now, Peter says, I don't really like scary movies much myself. And he asks, why do people want to be scared? A lot of people that don't like horror movies ask this question, why do you want to be scared? Why do you want to be scared? And she says, well, some people like them meaning horror movies, but they give me nightmares. Okay. I said, I get nightmares. She said, they give me nightmares. They, once again, horror movies, scary movies, they give me nightmares. So I get nightmares after watching these scary movies. So she says, I avoid horror movies as much as I can, meaning I try not to watch scary movies as much as I can, right? Okay. Now, Peter says, well, I believe in suspended disbelief. Often also said suspension disbelief. Now, disbelief is what? It's distrust, okay? You're not able to believe something. Basically, distrust, disbelief. Dis means minus. It's not there, right? Not. It's a negative connotation. So, suspended disbelief. And he says, so when I watch a movie, I put myself in that situation, okay? In that situation, and that really bothers me. That really annoys me, okay? That really irritates me. That really frustrates me, for example. But here, suspended disbelief basically is the feeling or the thought of not knowing what will happen. What if I lose my job? Or you watch a scary movie and there's a stranger that kills somebody. Then you think to yourself, what if a stranger happens to pop out from somewhere, and what if he or she attacks me? So those thoughts, okay? The thoughts of wonder, you can call them suspension disbelief or suspended disbelief. So he says, I put myself in the situation, meaning I imagine myself in that situation. All right, and he said, that really bothers me. And Rachel listens and she says, oh my goodness, that's a scary thought. Now he tells his story about when he was a kid. When I was a kid, my parents took us to a triple feature. Us probably meaning him and his brothers and sisters. A triple feature. A feature could perhaps mean a film, okay? But here triple means three, right? So a triple feature at the drive-in is basically an outdoor theater in those cases where you can take your car, drive your car in and watch a movie on a big screen outdoors from your car, okay? That's a drive-in theater, for example. And a triple feature is where they show three movies back to back. The first movie, second movie, and third movie, okay? So he says, and they thought we'd fall asleep by the third movie. They here is, of course, the parents. And he says, the third movie was Jaws, okay? Basically, they stayed up the whole time and they watched all three movies. So I have this horrible fear of sharks. We'll practice this pattern later on. I have a fear of something, and that's exactly what Peter said. I have this horrible fear of sharks. When I'm out in the ocean swimming, doing a long swim, yeah, Rachel breaks in, she says, the thought crosses your mind. The thought, okay, cross one's mind is, just happen to occur, just pops up. And he says, yes, it is a constant on my mind. You could add the thought. That was omitted in the conversation, but he's saying it is a constant thought on my mind, meaning whether I want to think about it or not, the thought just pops up in my head, okay? It does not leave my mind. I cannot stop thinking about it. And Rachel says, another thing that really scares me is the dark. A lot of people are afraid of the dark, especially children, I think. And then she says, I am afraid of the dark. That's right. So he says, so it's more of a fear of the unknown. A fear of the unknown, okay? Unknown is something that is not visible, something you are not sure will happen or not, right? So perhaps it can mean ghosts, spirits, or something that could possibly happen, something bad that could happen. So she says, exactly. So sometimes I have to put the lights on before I fall asleep. Now, put the lights on. It means turn the lights on before I fall asleep because I'm scared of the dark once again. Now, yes, do you have a nightlight? What is a nightlight? Oftentimes, moms and dads, they keep a nightlight in their children's room when they're little. A nightlight is a small light often, not a big lamp, but a small light that you can plug in, just to keep it slightly light in the room so it's not pitch dark. And she says, I do. It's just one of the ways I overcome my fear. So she's basically saying it's one of the ways, or one of the things that helps me overcome my fears. Now he says, well, I think Winston Churchill, or no, maybe Roosevelt, somebody said the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Thus, meaning there's really nothing to be afraid of, okay? It's the fear that you should fear. And that really applies. He says, other than sharks, he did mention he is afraid of sharks. He says, I don't have any big fears. I don't have any big fears. You can say, I am not afraid of anything. In other words, I don't have any fears. And he says we have to try to overcome our fears. Basically, as I did mention in the earlier part of our show, it's true. Try to overcome your fears by what? Not ignoring them, but facing them, okay? Well, that brings us to an end to the actual talk. Let's take a moment to listen to it one more time, along with the subtitles. The other day, I was flipping through the channels and I came across a really scary movie, The Exorcist.
That one is scary.
So I had to change that channel as fast as I could because I detest scary movies.
Yeah, I don't really like scary movies myself.
Yeah.
Why do people want to be scared?
Some people like it, but for me, they give me nightmares after I watch it. So I stay away. I avoid horror movies as much as I can.
I see.
I am really terrified of scary movies.
Well, I believe in suspended disbelief. So when I watch a movie, I put myself in that situation, and that really bothers me.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
When I was a kid, my parents took us to a triple feature at the drive-in.
Okay.
And they thought we'd fall asleep by the third movie.
Oh, no.
And the third movie was Jaws.
Oh.
So I have this horrible fear of
Suspense.
sharks.
Oh,
Even though there's very little chance of being bitten by a shark.
Attacked by a shark.
But when I'm out in the ocean, swimming, doing a long swim,
The thought crosses your mind.
it is a constant in my mind. You can't get rid of it.
Yeah. Another thing that really scares me is the dark. I am afraid of the dark, and I think one of the reasons is because I'm not in control. Or I feel like I'm not in control. And
So it's more of a fear of the unknown.
exactly, fear of the unknown. So sometimes I have to put the light on before I fall asleep because I'm scared of the dark. I don't know
on
what's going to
the
happen. I do. I'm not afraid to admit it, but it's just one of the ways I overcome my fear.
Okay. Well, I think Winston Churchill, maybe Roosevelt said,
Okay.
the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And that really applies.
Yeah, that's very profound.
Because I mean, other than sharks, which is kind of an unreal fear, I don't have any big fears. The idea is I think we have to try to overcome our fears.
Sounds good.
Well, today's topic is not so difficult, is it? It's quite easy to talk about, but you first of all need to think about what your fears are. So as we practiced in our warm-up segment with our brainstorming cues, first of all, prepare. Think about what your fears are, okay, when you started to fear it or them, and the details of it. And of course, you can apply certain expressions, phrases, and patterns when you talk about your fears. Let's try to keep it simple today. Our first little category here, talking about fears, is talking about general fears. I guess just common fears, okay? You can use adjectives to describe fear, such as terrified, fearful, horrified. Petrified is another word. This may be a new word, okay? Basically, you're terrified, horrified, and even stronger, you're petrified. Petrified of something, okay? It means very, very extremely afraid of something. Scared, afraid, scared to death is another one you can make use of as well. Okay? So the stronger ones, I guess, are scared to death, petrified, and also horrified or terrified. So these words that I circled tend to be stronger, a stronger fear, and these are a bit more gentle, okay? So these are adjectives you can use to describe fear. First of all, let's take a look at a pattern you can make use of. Now, be plus adjective, of, and then use a common noun, okay? Such as, I'm frightened of A. We saw this pattern in today's actual talk, right? So you can talk about general fear of something or somebody by using this pattern. For example, you can say, I'm afraid of ghosts. This is what I could say. I'm afraid of ghosts, okay? So take a look at this pattern. Keep it in mind. It's very simple. I'm afraid of what you're afraid of. Another one is, I'm terrified of heights. I'm horrified of heights. I'm petrified of heights, okay? So I'm terrified of something, okay? If you are afraid of going to the top of a high-rise building, a very tall building, you are afraid of heights. Another one, be plus adjective, by, and then a common noun, okay? Let's take a look. You can say, I am frightened by A, similar, a general fear of A, okay? Or fear experienced by having been frightened by A. Now, this may look confusing, but let's go over some sentences. Here is an example. I walked into a public bathroom when suddenly I was frightened by a giant cockroach. A giant cockroach. Okay, so you're talking about a fear experienced by having been frightened by it. Okay, you're talking from experience. So let's take a look. You can say, I'm frightened by cats. I'm frightened by cats. So the difference, here's a question. If you say, I am afraid of cats, you're saying, I'm generally just afraid of cats. I don't like cats. They scare me. But if you say, I'm frightened by cats, not of, I'm frightened by cats, you are most likely saying that you had some kind of experience, and that was a bad experience, and because of that horrifying or terrifying experience, you became to fear cats, okay? I hope it made it easier for you to understand. Okay, some other ways you can talk about general fears are, I dread snakes and spiders. I dread the thought of walking 3 blocks in heels. Sometimes you can think about something, and just the thought can be scary. Oh, in that case, you can say, I dread the thought of doing something. Okay, another one. I dread getting lost in unfamiliar places. This is exactly what I could say. I don't like going to department stores while sales are going on. I don't like going to crowded places like Yongdong because I dread getting lost in those areas. I'm not familiar with those areas. Okay, another one. I have a phobia of something. Now, have a phobia of. Keep that pattern in mind. Have a phobia. Phobia of doctors. It means I am very afraid of. I'm extremely afraid of doctors. I have a fear of flying. You can also add the ing form and say, I have a fear of doing something, a certain activity. I have a fear of flying. So people that do have a fear of flying have a very difficult time, going overseas on a plane, for example. Okay, now let's talk about some reactions, okay, to the fear of something. What happens when you are suddenly scared of something or something pops up from nowhere, okay? So for example, you can say, I break out in a cold sweat. A cold sweat in Korean is 식은땀, right? Suddenly you sweat and it feels so cold. So you break out in a cold sweat. You suddenly break out in a cold sweat. I have nightmares for weeks. That's a reaction. Another one, I shake like a leaf. You shake like crazy because you're so scared. I shake like a leaf. Another one, I become scared stiff. We all know what scared is, but stiff is what? Stiff is very stiff, okay? It's not flexible. So you can say, I become scared stiff, meaning I become so afraid that I can't move, okay? You can say, I become scared stiff, or I become traumatized. Traumatized. You know, trauma, right? Okay. I think often a lot of you may pronounce the word trauma. Of course, it's spelled T-R-A-U-M-A. How would you pronounce that? Trauma? Trauma, right? But actually, that's the wrong way of pronouncing it. It's trauma. Drop your jaw, trauma. So it is the word traumatized, okay? You're just mentally, even physically so scared of something, okay? There's a lot of mental stress. So you can say, I become scared stiff, or I become traumatized. Okay, let's take a look at a few more.
I get the creeps. I get the creeps. 오싹한 거죠. Or I get goosebumps. I think in Korean we say chicken skin, like 닭살, right? In English we don't say chicken skin, we say goosebumps. Chicken skin has a different definition. It means something totally different. If you want to say 닭살이 돋는다, you want to say I get the goosebumps or I get goosebumps, all right? Okay, everyone, try using these words here to talk about your reactions to your fears. And there's more information that will be posted up on our homepage, so please do check that out. All right, well, that is a wrap for our actual topic expressions. Let's now take you to today's idiom. Now, are you ready for today's idiom? Okay, here we go. Today's idiom is make your blood run cold. So I guess focus on the words such as blood and cold. Make your blood run cold. What do you think this idiom means? I'll give you a sample sentence. It is, the dark, narrow street I walked into made my blood run cold. One more time. The dark, narrow street I walked into made my blood run cold. Imagine the situation, okay? The definition of make one's blood run cold in Korean is 공포심으로 피가 싸늘히 식는 것 같은 기분이 들게 하다, 오싹하게 만들다. Okay, so in English it is to be extremely terrified. Simple, right? To be very, very scared. Here is another way you can use it in a sentence. Another example sentence is, for a second, I thought I saw a ghost and my blood ran cold. This happens to me a lot. I'm walking around in my house or down the street somewhere and I feel as if I saw something. For a second, I think I saw a ghost, and that is when my blood runs cold. Okay, everyone, hopefully you'll be able to make use of this expression, but hopefully you won't have to, okay, because it's a scary situation. Okay, job well done. Let's now take you to our next segment.
What are some things you fear or dread? Think back upon your life and try to remember when you began to fear those elements. Describe your emotion in detail as you talk about your fears.
What I'm really afraid thing is cockroach. I think most people hate it, but to me, it is extremely horrible creature. There was one day that I had to be at home alone when I was young. I was watching television sitting on the sofa. Suddenly, one huge cockroach came out under the TV. It was really big and fast, and it even flied. Frankly, I don't afraid most insects, but the only thing that I cannot catch is cockroach. At that night, I couldn't catch it, and also I couldn't sleep well at that night.
Welcome back, everyone, and Yoo Young-nim, thank you very much for the wonderful actual interview. Now, I think she did a splendid job in talking about her emotions, her reaction to her fear. She talked about her fear of cockroaches, right? Just like me. Let's check out what she said. Some great points and some oopsies. Let's begin with the good ones. She says, suddenly one huge cockroach came out from under the TV. This is a wonderful way she put it. So suddenly, okay, you can imagine what's happening. Suddenly, one very big cockroach came out, appeared. From where? From under the TV. So suddenly, all of a sudden, a big cockroach crawls out from under the television. You can imagine the situation, and that's wonderful. Another one is, I think most people hate it. But to me, it is extremely horrible creature. Now, this sentence here looks a bit awkward right now. It is our first oopsie, and she's talking about cockroaches. So she says, I think most people hate it. We're talking about cockroaches in general. But to me, it is extremely horrible creature. Now, when you're generally talking about something, normally you would pluralize it. So let's see how we can put this. You can say, I think most people hate them. Cockroaches. I think most people hate cockroaches. But to me, they are extremely horrible creatures. You see the difference? Up above, it's it, is, creature. All in singular form. But if you take a look at the correction, you notice that it's them. To me, they are extremely horrible creatures. So even if you are afraid of bugs or whatever, you are afraid of those insects, those bugs, those animals. So remember to pluralize it in general. But of course, if you are talking about a person that you fear, you would say he or she. You would not have to pluralize it, okay? Okay, and here is one more to correct. At that night, I couldn't catch it, and also I couldn't sleep well at that night. It's repetitive. The sentence begins with at that night and ends with at that night again. So you don't want to do that, right? What can you do? You can say that night. It's never at that night, okay? That night. 그날 밤에. That night, I couldn't catch it. That's fine. Or sleep well. I couldn't catch it or sleep well. The reason it's okay to say it is because you are talking about that one cockroach you saw coming from under the TV. So in this case, it is okay. Or you could say that night, I could neither catch it nor sleep well. So the difference between these two structures, in the beginning, I couldn't catch it or sleep well, but usually if you say something negative, you can say I could neither do A nor B, okay? Make use of that structure as well. Okay, job well done, everyone. Hope this helps a lot, and that brings us to an end. I really hope that you had fun with me talking about our fears. Of course, fears are not something that's quite, well, a good thing. But of course, as I did mention, yes, face your fears, everyone, if you do happen to have any. Don't ignore them. Now, keep in mind that it's very simple as long as you keep certain patterns in mind. The next time you talk about fears, maybe try saying, I am afraid of, and then add the common noun, or I am frightened by, and then the common noun. Usually, if you're talking about being afraid of something because of a certain experience, or try using, I have a phobia of something, or even the word dread. I dread so-and-so. It's quite simple. Don't pressure yourself into memorizing everything from today's lesson. Try to have fun with it, review it several times, and make them yours naturally. Okay, next time I'll be joining you with another topic. Now, this happens to be my favorite topic. I am an animal person, meaning I love animals, so we'll be talking about pets. So please do join me for that. In the meantime, come find your way over to www.ebse.co.kr, and of course, leave me some comments, messages, questions, anything. Feel free to do so. Okay, everyone, until next time, take care, and bye for now.